And we're asking Jesanya Menzies to come forward and present her paper. Can you give her a hand, please, to encourage her?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing this afternoon? Anybody blessed? Yeah, I'm blessed. I am blessed and highly favored. And I'm here to talk to you about coping with a child who has been sexually abused. But I'm just hearing that my wonderful jing-bang of a presentation that I had done for you is not necessarily available. So, am I allowed to take the mic out, or it has to stay in the stand? Let it stay? I can take it out. Okay. Yes. I have to just flex. All right. How many persons know the definition of sexual abuse? How many persons would say, yeah, I know what sexual abuse is? Just let me see a show of hand if you have an idea of what sexual abuse is. Okay, no one? There's a few persons. All right, for those few persons who put up their hand, could one of you just jump up quickly and just tell us what is your definition of sexual abuse? Quickly. Anyone? I remember who put up their hand, don't let me point. Yes, the lady in the black, you don't have to get up. If it's a challenge for you, just project your voice. Tell us what sexual abuse is. Yes? No? All right. Give me a second. I am going to tell you what sexual abuse is, but I'm pretty sure many of you probably know, but maybe you're a little bit shy. That's fine. When the person don't consent to have sex, that's sexual Okay, that's one type of sexual abuse called rape. You heard what she said? When somebody forces you to have sex with them and you don't want to, that's rape, and that is a type of sexual abuse. She's correct. Anybody want to add to that? Anybody want to add to that? No? No? All right. All right. Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate having that up, because I had prepared with it in mind. All right. So sexual abuse, especially as it relates to children, right? A lot of us think about sexual abuse as just having sexual intercourse with a child. Most definitely, that is sexual abuse. No doubt about it. But there are a lot of other things that people do that is sexual abuse and they don't know. I think I'm going to work with the walking thing, because I don't usually stand up one place anyways. Yes, a lot of things. So when you're having a sexually motivated conversation with a child, baby, I like, wash your fat and sweetie, and these young men, they think it's okay to approach a child like that. That is a form of sexual abuse. It might be mild, but it is still wrong. And people need to stop doing things like that to children. So child sexual abuse is the use of children in sexual acts or sexually motivated behaviors. So the behavior might not be overtly sexual, but because it is motivated by it have a sexual underpinning, it is still sexual abuse and it is still wrong. So kissing, fondling, using of sexual language, exposing children to pornography, and having a child touch you in a sexual way, it is wrong. Sexual abuse. You can move on. All right, there are a lot of risk factors, but I don't have a lot of time. There are a lot of risk factors. One of the risk factors of sexual abuse is having a special needs. So a child, for instance, might be visually impaired, or they might be motor impaired, cognitively impaired, or otherwise. Those children are at risk. Why? They might not be able to necessarily express themselves or point out the perpetrator as well as somebody who have all their faculties intact. So that put them at risk. Being a child under 4 years. Why do you think being a child under 4 years would be a risk factor? Exactly. They can't articulate themselves well enough to say, you know, so and so did this to me. Or even if they do, people might not believe them because they think they're making it up. They're mixing up fantasy with reality. So they do not. They are less likely to get help, and they are more likely to be abused if they are not in a supportive environment. So I can't go through all of those, but just to list a few: income poverty, socially isolated parents. So parents who live all the way up in the way there, them not have no connectivity and a lot of social services available. Move on, please. But they are protective factors. So on one side, there are risk factors, and on the other side, there are protective factors. Risk factors are things that would make them more likely to be abused. So what do you think the protective factors would be? It's the opposite. Let me give you a clue. Yes, so it's having support that would prevent the abuse from occurring, or if abuse has occurred, make them more likely to get help readily. So these are protective factors. A strong, stable family unit. Parents who are nurturing, you know, just basically having the education, because as a parent who is enlightened would know that, okay, I can't just leave my child with any and anybody. I have to make sure that this person is credible and trustworthy. Somebody who is not necessarily, you know, well understanding of certain things may just leave the child with anybody and say, boy, I have to go do a little hustling or so, all right, keep my baby for me, I soon come. And that child is then placed at risk. So you can move on. So it's signs of sexual abuse. A child comes to school. I want to share some real stories with you because, you know, it's a real thing. It's really happening and it's affecting so many of our children. A child shows up at daycare, right? Auntie is bathing her. And she says, my daddy bathes me with his tongue. What? My daddy bathes me with his tongue. What do you mean by that? And the child begins to explain what the father did to her. So slips of the tongue is one of the things. A child says something and it not sounds so right. The child is in your Sunday school class or, you know, your Sabbath class or so on. The child says, no, that not sounds so right. What does the child mean by that? You might want to probe a little bit and then bring it to the authorities, the attention of the authorities. Another case I remember, I'll never forget this boy. The teacher was so upset with him. He's a big boy, he's 7. Why him keep doodling up himself? And she get vexed and she clap him and she say, hey boy, you're a big boy now, why you keep messing up yourself? Finally, after this had happened to him a few times, he tell him that, you know, his mother boyfriend touched his bottom, trouble his bottom. She said when she heard that what the child said, she had to hug him up and apologize to him. She said, I'm so sorry, baby, I didn't know you were going through that. And in both cases, it was the teacher and the caregiver that brought it to the attention of the authorities. So we need to know what the signs of sexual abuse are and be very alert, because sometimes it's just a one little glimpse of opportunity. It just come out at that one point in time and it might not come out again. So if you are not alert and pick up on it, you could miss it and then that child could continue in that abusive situation. So difficulty walking or sitting, torn or bloody clothing, a child come up to the health center and have a STI. What a child doing with STI? They could have been exposed due to abuse. You can move on. Signs continuing, sexualized behavior. One of the things that sexual abuse does to a child, it alters development. Right? So a child at 5 is not usually very enlightened about sexual things. Not much. They might have a little curiosity about their body part or so, but nothing serious. But a child who's very sexualized and they want to touch people and they're just so upfront, it's a sign that this child has been exposed. Children who are not able to concentrate in class. So, usually the child would be reasonably focused, but the child just can't focus, staring out into space, lost. Usually, that's a red flag. It doesn't have to be a red flag for sexual abuse, but it could be something else. But once you see a red flag, it's a red flag. Probe it. Or if you're not feeling that you have the capacity to deal with it, refer to the guidance counselor or the church counselor or somebody who you think might be better able to get to the child. You can move on. So there are many more, but I have to run. So effects. As I was saying earlier, sexual abuse can impact normal development. So developmental psychology tells us that development takes place along 5 domains: spiritual or moral, physical, social, emotional, and cognitive. So when abuse disrupts a child's life, they might continue to develop normally in one domain. They might end up speeding up another one, as I explained with the sexualized behaviors, and it can also slow down one domain. So let me give you an example. So let's say the child was sexually abused at 8 or 9 years old. At 8-year-old or 9-year-old, basically know how to behave in public, right? They're not going to necessarily throw themselves on the ground and carry on like a wild animal when they feel upset and frustrated, right? Would you agree? By 9, they kind of have a little bit of self-control once they don't have a developmental disorder or so. The child is abused. The child just start clinging on to the mother, bally every minute, don't want mommy to leave, and exhibiting behavior that is normal, for a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. So in that instance, the sexual abuse would have set back that part of the development, the emotional. You follow me? And sometimes a child might be functioning cognitively, they're firing on all cylinders, they know they match the English and the integrated studies, they go on with that. But at the same time, they start to have sex, they start to do things that are not right. So usually the sexual urges come around the adolescent period. So if a child is, let's do same 8 or 9, and they start to talk about sex and they start to have sex, you know that is off. Usually by that age, they don't have that interest. They just play in a very platonic sense, and they have a very cursory interest in persons of the opposite sex. Nothing big deal, no big deal. But if they're really out there, then you know that part of their development has been altered. You can move on. So other effects of sexual abuse: seductive behavior, fear of a particular person, place, or thing, aggressive behavior toward younger children, suicide attempts, self-mutilation. So self-mutilation, they're cutting up themselves, and they're burning themselves and making scars and stuff on their hands. I see that quite a bit in my field. And it's something, once you see it, try not to react like, oh my God, try not to react like that. Try to remain calm and, just say, I noticed this on your hand, and just kind of gently say, what is happening? You don't have to tell me everything, but, would you like me to take you to the guidance counselor? Let them get the help, because usually that is a clear red flag that something is off. People don't just get up and just cut up themselves. Usually people like themselves and don't want to hurt themselves, right? Generally. So you can move on. Okay, move on. We went through a lot of effects. Now, where to get help? When you say help, there are more than one types of help. So when somebody said, look, I want help from the picnic, me here say that the dirty foot, two-faced, lying, buff teeth boy putting hand on my picnic, and me say, it now go so, me have to get justice for this, and I have to roll for this, The help that they're talking about is justice, right? Another person will come, they hurt, they confused, they can't think. Boy, all this I'm for them picnic, you know, all of that. They might be wanting support. And truth be told, we really need both. So to get the justice help, there's a Center of Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. In this region, you would either go to the Spanish Town Police Station on Burke Road, because they used to have the Sissoko on, what's the name, Hanover Street. I gather that there are police still working there, but it's not fully operational. So you need to go to the Spanish Town Police Station, to CIB, to make a report about that kind of thing. If you're in Kingston, Sissoko actually has a different branch on 3 Ruthven Road, different from the police stations that are located there. So you can go straight to that one on Ruthven Road if the incident occurred in Kingston. You can seek advice from the legal aid clinic or an attorney. All right, to get support now, we have the Victim Services Division. Let me say this, you don't have to go all the way to 47 E Old Oak Road. You don't have to drive all the way over there. There is a Victim Services Division in Spanish Town. It is Shop 12B, Oasis Plaza. Now, Oasis Plaza is on Marchpen Road. It's the one that have the KFC, that always smelling up the place with them food. That's Plaza. And it is right beside where Orion insurance brokers are. So it's in that vicinity. Right, you can see a licensed professional counselor. You can come to my agency, the Child Protection and Family Services Agency in Spanish Town. We are located at 10 Hanover Street. 10 Hanover Street. If you know where the big NIS building is, where people go for part, everything NIS. We are on the same building, but we are on the 2nd floor. Right? So you can come to that place, 8:30 to 5, Monday to Thursday. On a Friday, we close at 4. You can also call 211. I gather sometime there's a challenge with 211, but you can also call the previous OCR numbers that we used to advertise. I don't know them out of my head, but you can still call those numbers and get through. And we have a WhatsApp line as well. And you can go to the churches, especially churches that have a professional counselor. Some churches, they try to bring in the social interventions as well, and they would have an anointed minister, like our minister was praying, who also have a master's in psychology and counseling. So you can get help from a person like that as well. And it is good to see a Christian counselor if you're a Christian, because that person will understand your faith and be able to integrate your spiritual resources in their therapy. All right, on to creating a safe environment. Right? We must give reassurance. When something bad happens to you, you're driving on the road, your tire bust, you're trying to go somewhere, it's in the middle of the night, you're in distress. You want somebody to cuss you off and rough you up at that point in time? No, you want somebody to give you reassurance and say, all right, wow, you're going through a lot. This must be a difficult thing to deal with. I can appreciate that. I can understand that this is really, really rough. You know, I can just imagine. I don't know what you're feeling, but I can imagine that this is hard to deal with. But let us see how we can get through it together. Listen without judgment. The last thing you want when you're in a state of distress is somebody come and tell you, say, your fault, you know, you never did do this, and you never did do that, and if you did do this way, that wouldn't happen to you. Oh my goodness, it's like them take a big stick and just beat it on a little more. So you don't have the abuse and them come and abuse you again. No, sir. Listen without judgment. Listen without judgment. A good way to communicate that you are hearing what somebody is saying is to, after they speak, to say it back in your own words. I said, you know, am I hearing you correct? You said so and so and so happened, and you felt so and so and so. If you get it right, the person going to say yes, yes, and they're going to tell you more. If you don't get it right, they'll correct you and say, no, so and so and so and so it go. But at the end of that process, they feel that they have been valued and their feelings have been considered. Okay, allow a child to be honest and express his or her feeling. Be open and honest about what has happened to your child. Don't tell them no fairy tale story. Abuse or abuse. It might be rough, but tell them, look, what happened to you was wrong. She should not have done that to you. He should not have done that to you. They are wrong. Now, bother pretty it up and not tell them, say, okay, you're not going to go to a home. Not telling me not going to go to home because in truth and in fact, we might not know the outcome of the situation. Don't make them any promises that you cannot keep. Just tell them the reality. Say, I don't know what is going to happen, but I will be there for you. I don't know I don't know how it's going to work out, but I promise you that you have my support. All right? When the child does well, praise them. Do everything that you can to honestly build their self-esteem. You can move on. Have them participate in extracurricular activities that they are interested in. Try and have a consistent and clear set of rules. What children need is structure. I know that doesn't sound right because every time you try to lay down rules with a child, but yet they complain. But at the end of the day, when there is no structure, they're deceived, they're disoriented. Children like structure. So you need to ensure that you have a little routine, they have a little time for recreation, they have time when they know, okay, this is church time, this is God time. And you structure, you give them as much of safety as you can, as much safety as you can. Make privacy a priority. So everybody bathe in the bathroom, everybody change in the bathroom, nobody take off their clothes and come out of the bathroom commando. You have to cover up everything, especially certain places. Cover up. Okay, we're almost done. It's been long, but you have stayed with me. All right, so the R's of trauma-informed care. Right? The 4 R's. The first one is to realize. When people experience trauma in their lives, their behavior change. I have seen it. A girl, more than one girls I know them personally because of the job. They were battered. Now, a battery is a very, very extremely horrible type of rape where you're raped by several people in rapid succession on the same occasion. Right? So they would have gone with a boyfriend thinking that this is the only person, and then they bring in all their friends, and then they were just cruelly abused. And I found that young lady, after that, her father said to me, but the same thing that hurting her is that she's running down. She just had no self-control after that. She just went, everything that looked have 2 feet and the right required genitals, she went with that person. And it's something I've seen as a trend. Some persons who are sexually abused, they just don't have any self-control. They're just open to everybody. And you would be tempted to say, look here, no man, you don't value yourself. You're worthless. Why you this? But the person wasn't behaving like that before. Something about that traumatic incident just completely overall how the person processes things that causes them to react that way. And it is hard because you don't condone the behavior, but you must be able to appreciate that you're not dealing with a brain that is functioning normally. This brain was altered by trauma. All right, so recognize problem reactions that persist and affect daily life. So sometimes the incident happened a long time, but the person is still affected. The person is still affected by years. Years later, they will have a flashback. They will break down at a point. He said, but I thought I was over this. But it is normal for persons to go through that process. And that is why they need to go through like a victim services division to get support. Respond. All right? Instead of reacting negatively and beating the person with a stick over their head after they done go through the trauma already, respond from a knowledge-based perspective. So if you don't know, it means you might have to do a little research and say, what is it? What happened to persons who are sexually abused? What are the long-term effects of it? And try to get the understanding. And then you can be better able to really support them through what they're going through. Resist re-traumatization. One of the things I do when somebody comes in and I'm taking information about a sexual abuse matter, I don't have them go through a lot of detail with me, because when they go to the police, oh my, the police want to know everything, line by line, drop by drop, detail by detail. And I have sat in on some of these interviews and I'm like, oh my God, the police want to know what position, all detail. So you wanting to get details from them, and then somebody else have to get details again, and then somebody else have to get oh my goodness, trauma upon trauma upon trauma. Don't traumatize them 5 times. Yeah, right. So if you don't need to know all the graphic details, leave it for those who need it for their records. Okay, now trauma-informed care, that's what TIC stands for. And we take a trauma-informed care approach when we're dealing with persons who have experienced some kind of life-altering negative experience. That is what we refer to basically as a trauma. And sexual abuse is very traumatic. So the first principle, or it's brought down as SET 3 C's. So the S in SET means safety. Now, generally, when we think of safety, we just think about a physical space. So an investigator swoon in on a situation and take up the child. They're not able to get through to the family members on time. But limited resources, they put the child in a place of safety sometimes. Now, the place of safety might be physically safe, but it might not be emotionally safe. Now, emotional safety comes when you have somebody who can listen to you, understand, empathize with you. Some of the things that I would have mentioned earlier when I was talking about creating a safe environment. So safety is both physical and emotional. Dare I say spiritual, but that's not in the literature, but we know that, right? Okay. All right, this is the last slide basically. Empowerment, guiding and supporting the families. We don't do for people what they can do for themselves. So you can give the person information, you can tell them where to go, you can even probably, carry them to the place the first time, and then they will have to help themselves, but provide as much support as they need and information and guidance so that they can continue to help themselves. Trustworthiness and transparency. Don't tell any lies. Don't make any promises that you can't keep. Try as best as possible not to misguide or mislead the person. Say, I will be there for you. I will support you to whatever happens, but I can't guarantee you the outcome of this situation. Collaboration and participation. Do not try to do everything yourself. If you are the teacher or the guidance counselor, solicit and get help from different key persons in this person's life and who are necessary for movement of this case. Choice. All right, don't take away the child's power to choose. Let the child give their voice. Child Month is saying, stand up, speak out, protect the rights of children. Give them a voice once they are old enough to speak for themselves. Let them tell you, okay, who would you like to live with? Who would you want me to consider calling to help you in this situation? I'm close to my auntie, I'm close to my uncle. Let them be in a part of it. All right, cultural sensitivity. Our culture is different from North America. So even though a lot of our literature comes from North America, we must be able to apply and understand that we are dealing in a Jamaican context, and how Jamaicans deal with and treat with things is different. We know that if the man get let out of prison, out of jail, on bail, they might chop him up and light him on fire. So certain things we have to consider when we are responding to a situation so that we can make informed decisions that will help everyone involved. So I thank you for your time. It was pretty fast, roller coaster, but you stayed with me and I appreciate that. Any questions at this time? Questions? I see my colleague, sir. Welcome.
Okay, Before I ask the question, there's an observation first. I find with respect to generations in terms of sexual abuse, the older people tended to keep it quiet and they encourage the younger children to be quiet. What is the agency doing in educating these older persons about this?
Well, what I've just done today is one of the examples of things that we are doing as an agency. We have walkthroughs very frequently in different communities. We target communities where there are high rates of abuse, and we go in, we flood them with information, we engage people on the street corner, everywhere we can catch them, and we let them know what child abuse is and the consequences of it. I can only take one more question at this time.
In terms of the Child Care and Protection Act, how do you put it in popular format that persons, the ordinary person on the street, can understand?
Okay, well, I know that our PR unit currently has 2 copies of it out in a child-friendly way that even an adult can read it as well, colorful graphics, puzzles and stuff around it as well. So those have been distributed. I don't know if maybe they need to do some more reprints, but we have easy to read stuff out there that explains what the Child Care and Protection Act says. And at this time I want to thank you. You have been a very good audience, and I trust that you will benefit from the rest of the conference as well.
Thank you so